We're starting. Okay.
Okay.
So this is group 3, the blue team. Right? Group 2 or group 3? I can't remember.
I think we're group 3. Group 3, the blue team.
All right. All right.
And I can offer the prayer.
Okay.
And then we'll get started, okay?
All right, sounds good.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we are so very thankful for this day, and we're very thankful for the opportunity that we have to meet together to discuss the case study that we read. And we're also very thankful for the technology that is available to us to be able to do this. We thank thee so very much for our Savior Jesus Christ, and we would ask the Heavenly Father to please bless that we may have a good meeting today, and that we can deepen our understanding of this material, and that we can continue to progress as leaders. We say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. So what I'll just a report right now. It's we got Skylar and Joe in the meeting, and we are still waiting for Jackson and Patrick to get in. So we're just gonna go ahead and start. And so let's go ahead and quickly, since we're let's go ahead and dive into the thing, and then afterwards we'll stop the broadcast and quickly go over the sign up sheet.
Okay, that sounds good.
All right. So in this, it didn't seem like a very long one, but what did you feel? I mean, in reality, what did you feel about Simon York and his behavior?
So in general, and I think kind of going back to like the first point that we have for the case study activity, which is what is really going on in the case,
Mm-hmm.
and what is the root of the problems.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, I don't know. I thought when I first read it, I kind of was like, oh, well, he's just kind of being rude. Maybe he kind of like the first guy, I forgot his name, who made the first complaint. Yeah, about how he was very abrasive and everything like that. But what I really think is he's just really stressed out.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really important to see, especially as the manager who's going to be talking to him. You have to understand that he just became a new manager.
Mm-hmm.
He just got put in charge of a few things, and he really wants to do a good job. He's trying to impress others. He's trying to show others that, he got that job because he's good at it. And I think that might be kind of the basis of what led him to kind of stress out and kind of lash out at a few others, and in not the best way that he could have.
Mm-hmm.
So my first thought is not necessarily that he's a bad guy, or that he's the kind of guy that's always going to be yelling at others, or pointing out the mistakes of others, but rather maybe he's just kind of stressed out to a point where he's kind of taking it out on others. I don't know. What did you think? Think?
I share the same sentiment. This class we're reading 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, right? I'm trying to make sure we're in the right class.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, right class.
In the book, it talks about, seek first to understand, then to be understood. It's a really good principle in the book, and it talks about, why is he doing this? And like you said, he's possibly stressed. He's also a perfectionist, I think.
Yeah.
And he, unfortunately, sometimes people in that character of being a perfectionist, they don't sometimes have the best ability to communicate with other people about why is it so important to be perfect.
Yeah.
And
he puts the same standards on others that he puts on himself.
Exactly.
We have to be careful doing, because just because they're not up to your standard doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad job.
Right. And I think at this point in it does talk about, it does say hints. It's like Simon York's behavior is inconsistent with the company's culture. I agree with that. I mean, yeah. I don't think he has every right to go out and lash out. However, I think like what you said, he's a new manager. He's trying to prove himself. He wants to do it right. And if he doesn't get it right the first time, he's going to feel like he's not the man that they hired.
Yeah.
but I've also kind of realized too, when people do certain things like that, either there's 2 points that we have to discover is why did they do that? And I mean, why did, yeah, first and foremost, why did he do that? Was it because he was under a lot of stress, or is just his mannerism?
Yeah.
So, but while we're discussing it, it's asking the questions, why is this important to address?
Yeah, and that's a really good question, a good thing to think about. In all honesty, it needs to be addressed because I think first and foremost, because he is a new manager, now is the time to kind of help him be the kind of manager that you want in your company.
Mm-hmm.
And also you want to show the other employees that you are listening to their complaints. If it's let off, and if Griffin doesn't really do anything, not only is she not helping someone who is either stressed or either just needs to kind of correct some of the ways that he treats other people, but she's also showing a lack of respect for those, showing the complaint and giving the complaint. And so on both levels, she needs to make sure she can meet with him. And I think that's really why it's so important to address it with him. And then I think the important thing that I'm sure we'll talk about here in just a little bit is, how Mary Griffin actually will respond to it, and what she needs to do about it. But I think that's kind of why it needs to be addressed right now.
Well, also, you hit on every point correct. I'm just going to add something to it. Is his by not addressing this, it demoralizes the rest of the company, and it shows inconsistency.
Yeah.
And then therefore your team, digresses, and you have another problem to work on.
Yeah.
Okay. Next, what are the specific behaviors that raise concerns?
I think the first one, the one that kind of would bug me quite a bit, was actually the first time that he had this incident that at least was kind of recorded in a way, was when he was in the meeting presenting to other managers in the company, and some of the information was wrong on the slideshow that they were showing.
Mm-hmm.
And at first, he actually did something good. At first, he was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. This is really embarrassing. I should have checked that." But then once he kind of found out, and the other employee with him kind of said, "Oh, well, I messed up I think he said I messed up the math, or something was wrong there." He kind of immediately threw him under the bus and publicly, kind of said, "Well, if this was, in front of the actual group, the X Games group that we'd be presenting this to, we wouldn't get the job." And it's not the best time to be talking with your employee in front of others, about what he needs to be doing differently or better. And I think really what should have happened is he should have continued with that same mentality of, "Oh yeah, I'm so sorry everyone, I messed that up." Because in reality, he is the manager, and even if your employee messes something up, it's your fault, because you either, I don't want to say it's your fault, but you need to also take a responsibility, because he's the one who did it, and he's working for you, and you didn't check the work perfectly to have it done. And I'm not saying that he needed to perfectly check everything, but he's part of that team. And so I think he should have continued on that path, saying, "Yes, I'm sorry. I need to do better next time," and focusing on what he needs to do, and not immediately throw his employee under the bus when he found out that it was his fault. I don't know. And that public almost humiliation just isn't the right way to do it.
So you feel that so by his public humiliation, it's an issue which will not be sufficient. I don't know what the words I want to say. It's not going to be able to help the company grow.
Yeah, it doesn't really help anything, because number one, it makes York look, the other managers aren't going to like it either. It's an uncomfortable situation for everyone in the meeting, So first of all, he's going to lose a little bit of respect, because he's trying to, kind of put the blame off of himself. And so in all aspects that changes it. Me personally, I'm a project manager,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what my job is. Mm-hmm. And so I deal with lots of different groups, lots of contractors, and things happen. Mistakes happen here and there. And when it comes down to it, in order for me to be a good project manager and to manage everybody, I can't in a meeting, if something's wrong, I can't just say, hey, what did you do wrong? Wow, I can't believe you did something like that. But rather it's more of a, okay, yeah, we all need to, fix that. And if I'm in a meeting with other people presenting the project, if there's some information wrong, I can't blame someone else for that information. I have to take the blame, saying, yeah, I'm the project manager. Even if I didn't put that information in, even if I didn't make the mistake, it's not my place to say whose fault it was, but rather to say, oh yeah, I'll fix that, I'll change it, and then I can talk to the contractor, the employee that's working for me, and I can talk to him about how it happened and what we need to change. But it's definitely not. It wouldn't help me at all to throw him and kind of point out his mistakes or her mistakes in front of the whole group, because it makes me look bad as the project manager, and it also makes them feel bad too. And that doesn't help with anything. It's not going to help fix problems in the future. It's not going to help with respect. We gotta, in order to move forward, it needs to be just a lot of respect and a lot of understanding that we all make mistakes. In a way,
Wow. Yeah, that's great. I think that if I'm right, you believe by the philosophy what do they say? Praise in public, reprimand behind closed doors.
Yeah.
What public versus non-public, whatever. Yeah, I think that's a wise philosophy to live by, and it sounds like you've already had to establish some of that while in your own jobs, and well, it's good that you're doing that, because then we'd be reading about you in this case study.
Yeah.
So going on, what do you think Mary's role should be doing in all this? I mean, she's basically the direct over him. How do you feel that what should she be doing in this?
So I kind of talked about this in the assignment that I wrote up. We were supposed to write the case study,
mm-hmm.
or the case write-up, I mean. And part of the the points I made was how she needed to respond to it and kind of what she needed to say. And in reality, and this also goes off of the workshop, the PowerPoint workshop that went over how the best way to handle people when it comes to criticism and stuff like that. And I think it was one of the important points there is that she does need to have a meeting with him. She has the meeting set up. He has a few things that he wants to talk about during the meeting. But in reality, it needs to start out with her first, praising him for what he is doing well at. And, as you read the case, mm-hmm. he's done some great things for the company. He really is a good employee. He's working hard. And I think first and foremost, she needs to address that, because I think first it'll make him feel more comfortable in there. It'll make him feel like he is doing a good job and that his manager is thankful for what he's doing. And it also creates a positive and comfortable environment, so mm-hmm. that as she may need to move into, okay, well, here's what, we might need to make sure we do better at least he knows that she is, she already likes what he's doing. She just thinks that there's one thing that needs to maybe change. Mm-hmm. And, I think that's really important, because the last thing that would be beneficial for her or the company is to call him in and right away, first thing, just talk about what he's doing wrong. Because right. That doesn't work for anybody. I mean, I'm sure that you've had it before where you might talk with a manager or even just somebody in general, maybe a client even, and they only point out the first thing is that, oh, you did this wrong. And it is, it's hard to hear. We all get defensive. And mm-hmm. so to first hear, wow, my boss is thankful for what I'm doing here. She thinks I'm doing great with this. When it moves into the criticism, it's a lot easier to handle, because all of a sudden you're not worried about your job. You're not worried about all these things, but rather you're having a comfortable conversation with your superior who thinks you're doing a good job and is coaching you on how to do better. And I think that's how she needs to handle this.
So the sandwich method,
Yeah. Yeah.
Two pieces of bread and the meat, and then you just, yeah. It's a delicate situation though too. You gotta,
It is.
you're right. You go in with, giving them assurance that this is going to be constructive and to help you both parties to come out with a better result than they did when they first came in. And you can't do that with going in with guns and shooting up everything, because at the end
Yeah.
it just comes to a bloody mess.
Yeah.
No. So how do you? But do you believe that she should do it right away or let it stew a bit? What's your thought on that?
I think it's important to do it right away. I mean, she already set up the meeting, and she still has the option to opt out of talking about it because he has things that he wants to bring to her during the meeting. But I think it needs to be brought up because bringing it up now, he remembers what happened.
Mm-hmm.
It's fresh in his mind too, which means that he may be able to point out some things he could have done better as well. I think it's sometimes dangerous to kind of point out someone's, things that they need to get better at a while after it's happened, because then they can't remember doing it, or they can see it differently in their head. I think it's important to hit it, to talk about it right away, to fix it quick, and that way they can avoid more problems or even deeper problems that may cause more conflict in the company. I don't know.
So the adverse effect of it, if she doesn't do it, is that it could backfire, and the team could start disintegrating.
Yeah. I mean, he could continue to act that way because no one's really told him that they don't like it. Maybe he's not reading many signs of other people. He can continue to do that. And then all of a sudden you have a bunch of employees that are really mad because they keep getting, yelled at by a manager. And
Right.
And that causes them to be unhappy at work, to be less productive. I mean, this goes back to what we read last week with the Semler, where it was so stressful there that no one was doing very well. And I think the same type of thing will happen here. That if you start just letting people do that, act that way, people are unhappy at work, people are less productive, and therefore your company is not doing near as well.
No, it is true. I mean, I guess I don't know if you ran into situations in your work or in the past that people try to avoid the conflict. Why is that? Why do people avoid conflict?
I think every situation is different, but I think we'll try to avoid conflict because first, they don't know how to present it in a good way. And that's why that workshop was so good, that the PowerPoint presentation. But I think people don't know how to present it very well. So when there is a problem, they don't know how to help that person without coming off as mad or angry. And they also worry about the effects that it might have on that person. And I think those are some of the hesitations that people have.
So fear.
Yeah, just fear of the unknown, of how will they react, what will they do, and I think that people have to overcome that though, because a company can't work avoiding conflicts. You have to get them out and get them fixed. Unless
So
they really don't need to be. I mean, there is also just little tiny things, that really can be left, and sometimes they're overcome. I don't know if you've ever watched The Office before, but
no.
there's an episode where he brings out all these old problems that have happened that people have told to the HR that were never taken care of. And and that didn't work out because he was bringing things up from 6 months before, like a little thing here and there, and it caused everyone just to be mad at each other. But I think it is important to quickly, when it first happens, to try to help the problem.
Huh. So, but so do you feel that Simon knows what he's doing wrong, or I mean, if you had a guess in this situation, do you feel that he knows what he's doing, or do you think he's just personality, he's just oblivious to it?
Whether if it was his personality, I think he's oblivious to it. If it has to do with being stressed about what his work is and what he's trying to get done, I think he would be kind of oblivious too, because he's so focused on getting everything right that he's not thinking about how it's affecting those who he works with. So I think either way, he might be a little bit oblivious, but if it's personality, I think it's going to be a little bit harder for Mary to, address it, because he might not see it even after she presents it. But if it's based on his, stress or, just trying to do a good job, once she points it out, I think that he'll see it pretty quick and be able to do that. But I don't know. I don't think that he's very aware of it. I mean, I think he knows that he's gotten mad at people, but in his mind, he's doing what's right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why it's a sensitive subject, and that's why it's a sensitive case, because chances are he does think he's doing something right, because he's trying to benefit the company, trying to make sure things are flowing correctly. And that's where it's kind of hard.
Well, in the case study, it does talk about him and his, when he was working with the previous brand manager. Is that what his?
Yeah, he was brand manager.
Yeah, he seemed like he was respectful. He did question him, but no more than just to try to push the envelope and show, there's better ways of doing things.
Yeah.
So from what I can gather, I think I agree with you, is that he did, it is stress, and maybe it's just a part of his personality that he did not know. I don't think there was no malice in it. I think he was just trying to make sure that the company itself, maybe a little bit of self-preservation, he wanted to make sure that this was going to go flawless.
Yeah.
Because, and I think a lot of it is when Mary goes into this conversation, she does a lot of find out questions.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah. So I mean, when I was, I don't know. Have you served? You've served a mission?
Yeah, I have.
Okay. I'm from a little bit older school when we used to think called the commitment pattern. And in the commitment pattern, there was a thing which the very first step was preparation. And in preparation, there's a part called building a relationship of trust. And in this situation, to advance someone to commitment, we were told we had to do a lot of find out questions. And you'd be surprised when we did that correctly, we would understand, it's like the day that, you committed someone to be baptized, and you're like, that they know the gospel is true and everything. And at the very end, they say no. And you're like, wait a minute, you say you love the Book of Mormon, you love, Joseph Smith as a prophet. Wait a minute, you go to church every week. Why can't you get baptized? And the person's shying back. And then as you do more find out, you kind of find out the person's scared to death of water.
Yeah.
To have their head completely underneath the water. And I believe that's how a lot of our conversations are when a sticky situation comes into play, is that you're not probing, but you're finding genuinely with love and concern for the person. You really ask solid find out questions. And then when you do that, you can commit them to do anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. I believe if Mary is to, by having this, I believe Mary should go in, like what you were saying, with a strong, encouragement. But in the midst of, before she lays down lays down what is placed before her, I think she needs to do a little bit more finding out.
Yeah, questioning him of things, like life things, like, how's your new job going?
Yes.
What are the difficulties with the job? And I think you're definitely right. I think if she was to do that, she might find out that there's something else going on. And like you said, and we've kind of talked about here, it seems to be more stress than personality, because he hasn't really had this problem before.
Mm-hmm.
And he's been with the company for a while. So, maybe it is something personality that hasn't come out until now, but it's probably brought on by stress. So I think you're right. I think most likely something's going on. And if she can do, kind, probing questions,
Hmm.
she might be able to find out really what's going on, and there might be another issue and another thing that she might even be able to help alleviate or relieve that would solve the problem itself.
No, I agree with. I mean, when it talks about it in the case study review that we're supposed to write up. What is the roots? And I find that. How about this? I've been in my position for now 15 years. Before I started doing a lot of study, I would go in with blazing my gun, saying, "Hey, you did a bad job and everything," and because I was raised by good parents, but it was a home where we were guilty until proven innocent, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But as I've learned through my wife, she taught me a lot of great things. Is that um, by by getting to know someone and starting to understand and try to feel and start, instead of being objective, be subjective. You start trying to understand exactly what their feelings are, because when you start doing that, you help try to pull back any layers that might have been developed. But that also comes through a building a relationship of trust. And with as Mary is doing this, she needs to make sure she has his confidence first before she does lay down some concerns.
Yeah.
So, by when she has the full trust of him, she can basically ask him to do almost anything
Yeah.
for, and it's like it really is. We were. Sorry, I keep on going back to our mission. We're asking people to make very life altering changes in their lives, and they trust us. I mean, you want to say, "Oh, it was all by the Spirit and gospel," but a lot of times they sort of lean on our testimony until theirs gets strong enough. I mean, granted, you get those golden investigators, but they really rely on you, and if they trust you, they'll do almost anything. I mean, and that's how it is with the Savior, right? We trust him enough that, hey, I don't understand why. Let's just say you have a problem with tithing. Why do I have to pay tithing? And so it goes right back. He may not understand. Why can't I reprimand them? They made a mistake, right? Shouldn't I not just tell them right there on the spot? But when she can say, well, I guess goes back, well, how would you feel if someone, and he may not even think, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
But he will respect Mary enough to say, okay, you're right. This is the culture. I can respect that because Mary's got his trust.
I agree with that. No, I think that's really well said.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I really wish that talking to everyone was the exact same on every case, but you have probably realized in your job, you can't just take one case and be the same for everybody.
Yeah. No, everyone's different, and that's why, it is important to be kind, to ask those probing questions, to try to figure out really what's going on with them. Because every situation is different, and most of the time it has to do with things that are going on in their life or in their job, but it has to do with other things. And so I think you're right. Building that trust by asking those questions, getting to know them, really, giving the impression, because it's true, that you care about them.
Mm-hmm.
And that you're actually there to help them. You're not there just to make sure that the company makes a profit, but also, to make sure that they're, getting what they need out of it. That's when you're going to have that trust. That's when you're going to be able to, talk about the concerns. And that's when, like you said, even if they don't fully understand, they can say, well, you know what, there's a reason for it. And she's giving me that reason. But she also has to know that, if this is one of those situations where even after all of that, he says, well, I don't agree with you, and I want to keep doing what I'm doing, that's when she might have to kind of lay down a little bit of hardball and say, okay, well, that's not how you're doing it. And
No,
you have to change it, and I think that's and maybe that's what he would need with that personality if he got to that point. But
okay, so you bring up a very good point right there. It's another question is in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, it talks about guiding principles.
Yeah.
And in the book, it talks about are we family principle? Are we church? Are we work or anything? But if you have a good, center, sorry, not principle. If you have a principle-centered business, no one can dispute the principles because those are the guidance to how the company is.
Yeah.
If the principles of the principles of your business is we don't work on Saturday and Sundays, just flat out, and someone says, well, I want to work on Saturday because I have a project to do. It's like, well, that's not our principle. So you're going to have to figure out a different way to do that. It's not, so you're not attacking them and they're not attacking you. What they're doing is you're taking the ability to take the principles that you have a principle and say, hey, it's easier for you to say yes, no. You're able to address, the problems or the concerns or whatever because you have those guiding principles.
Yeah.
I mean, for instance, my biggest customer, he says, "Can we come on Sunday?" And I'm like, "I'm sorry, I don't do it." And I didn't even have to think about it because it was a principle that has been in this business for forever. And I said, and he said, okay. But, it was 7 a.m. on Monday that I had to be here to welcome him and worked out great. I didn't have to give up my Sunday and it all was for the better.
Yeah.
But that's a culture that has to be maintained. And that's where I think Mary has to, she being his boss or supervisor, whatever, she has to make sure that he clearly understands those principles, the culture, and everything that the company stands for, but make sure that as you present it, just saying, no, the company's principles, you're attacking the company's principles, and we can't tolerate that.
Yeah.
I think it makes the conversation run a little bit easier. At least
I think you're right.
So, I think I've gone through most of the questions. Do you have any more? You want any closing summary or anything else you want to discuss?
No, I think that was really good, and I appreciate you for leading this one. Now I know we need to fill out the sheet for the leaders and send that over to the professor.
Okay.
I'll lead next week, and I'll email already like tomorrow to try to get next week's meeting set up, so we can try to make sure that the other two can get on. But if you want to assign me for next week, and then we can assign, the two of them for the next 2 weeks, and then we'll just go in that same order all the way through. And then I think if you could just email the professor and just add CC us to that email, just so he knows that we're all on there.
Yes.
And then, and then I think once we end this broadcast, it'll save as a YouTube video.
Mm-hmm.
And if you could also just email that YouTube video, so then I'll post it on the discussion board, because we're supposed to post that to the discussion board.
Yeah, so that's the question. That's all we have to do. We don't have to answer any questions or anything. We just post this. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's what it looks like. It looks like, after you've done that, during the meeting, this week's group leader, it just says that we have a Google Hangout. Then once everyone is joined, we have a prayer, have the recording, we do the group sign up thing, and then after the discussion, stop the recording, obtain the YouTube link for your record activity, and then post the link to this discussion board. So it looks like that's all we need to do. And I think that there's no responses or anything, because we're not supposed to be watching someone else's hour video or so, and we don't, and we had our discussion in the meeting. So yeah, do you know how to get the YouTube video off of the?
Yeah, last semester I learned how to do all of this, and so I was like, oh, good. So like I said, I'll go ahead and I went ahead and I put you in for lesson 4 that next week, lesson 8, and then I've left the bunches open for Patrick and for Jackson to fill in if they want to come in. For right now, I'll just explain that, hey, we weren't able to meet up with everybody, and actually, I'm going to go ahead and we don't need to have this being recorded anymore.